What's happening everyone? Pragmatic Addict here. So, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have the biggest intentions on seeing this one. I'm not the biggest body horror fan, and even more so, this film is like a whopping 2.5 hours. But you wanna know what else I'm equally not a fan of? Movies that look predictable and cliche as all hell while being another apocalyptic horror film to come out this year. Yeah, not every movie this year is gonna be Joker 2 or Terrifier 3, guys. Nope. Sometimes you gotta choose between the next apocalyptic horror film or a 2.5 hour movie about a drug. Plus, I had a screener for this one. It's getting universal acclaim, and this is my job. Let's talk about The Substance. Also, it's funny, I get surgery on the back of my neck in 5 days. I was telling a buddy of mine, I was like, damn, too bad I couldn't get that surgery a week earlier. Show up looking like this film's poster. So in The Substance, Demi Moore plays an aging and fading celebrity who embraces a new drug on the black market called The Substance. And what this drug does is that you inject the serum into you, and it actually creates, the premise is a clone, but it creates a much younger, much more perfect, just better version of you. But what is not displayed or known are the horrifying side effects that come with this. And from that premise, I was really intrigued. I was like, okay, I get it. She's a celebrity. She's fading out. She's worried about her career, her legacy. I'm sure that there are some people out there that would do this. But with every new drug thing on the black market, you're obviously taking a huge risk. And in this film's specific case, with all of these things in fact being relevant, yeah, kind of a recipe for disaster and a pretty horrifying scenario for most of us to imagine. And with this film's buzz, runtime, premise, I was super intrigued to see how far, but also just how hard this film would go. So the first thing that caught my eye, where I could actually see where buzz could be directed, was the directing. For any 2.5 hour movie, it can be tricky as far as how much to include something before moving on to the next, when to address things, and how quickly yet subtly this movie not only addresses our main character, but how quick it just catches us right up to speed with her story, this actress's timeline. I found expertly crafted from both a directing and a screenwriting standpoint. I think for the most part, with this being a 2.5 hour movie, a lot of people may expect more of a setup than what we actually get in this movie, but it's the subtlety that actually helps condense this that also plays into what kind of movie this is. It's very psychological. This all feels like you're watching a dream, a nightmare, an idea, just a disgusting yet understandable and very thought-provoking scenario. And just as a film with so much buzz and so much weight as far as word of mouth and others prepping you before seeing this film, I do think that you should listen to or read up on some of the reviews and statements that people are saying about this film who have seen the movie, because I'm just gonna say immediately, as you would expect with a critically acclaimed body horror film, shit cuts really deep, and not just as a body horror film, but psychologically as well as the message is actually trying to convey, and themes of this film such as neglect, obsession, as well as, yes, drug abuse. It is an unpleasant watch in a lot of ways that people will expect, but it's also just a very unpleasant watch in a lot of ways that people may not expect, as far as how far the film goes and how deep it cuts from a more thematic standpoint as well as a cinematic one. And not only just from the elements of body horror. I mean, there were some times where there was some genuinely IMAX-worthy stuff in here, from the sound design during some very intense scenes to sell a specific feeling or thought that I just couldn't look away from, no matter how jarring or bothersome it at times became, because this is truly just some of the best filmmaking I have seen in some time. But going into just how the film chooses to tell the story and the setup of this fading actress, as well as how she gets involved with the substance itself, it's all that subtlety that really haunts your viewing. Like when you see the substance make its appearance for the first time, you don't know who's behind it, what its side effects are, and even the packaging, like when it gets delivered, the font on it even, it's the perfect package and perfect item that just calls for the biggest horrible gut feeling in you, and is just the most red flag scenario of something that you just don't want to fuck with. You don't want to get involved with it. You don't even want to touch it or open the package. And again, this film is very psychological. It's all about the scenario of this. The imagination and horrifying fantasy of it all being told in a what if sort of sense, and the film just taking that as far as it can with the drug, the outcome, the side effects, as well as having it be displayed on one of the most understandable and vulnerable people that you can kind of imagine in this scenario. Now, I will say, for how expertly crafted this film is from a cinematic standpoint, and how hard and well everything landed with just seemingly such lightness up to this point, I thought the actual body horror presentation of it when it is first presented, it was honestly just the first issue I actually had with the film up to this point. I just found that whole first entry of the body horror aspect in this movie just to be really goofy and over the top, and just kind of for shock factor that you would typically expect with body horror films. I didn't really find anything actually impressive or unique about it. The whole scene where this actress actually meets the clone, or she actually meets this other version of herself, the way that it's played out and how it kind of comes into picture, I just kind of had the feeling of okay, I guess that's a way you could do it. I mean, I don't know how I would do it. I'm not the one writing a body horror film, but that's what they did. That's how it started, I guess. But goddamn, Margaret fucking Qualley as the clone, supposedly portraying someone who has just transformed into this brand new, much younger, perfect body. She is outstanding as far as that choreography, and with how well the movie was from a storytelling standpoint as well as a directing standpoint, and how much she just absolutely nailed her character's entry. It had me so fucking hyped for what was still to come from Qualley's performance, from her playing this character. Because basically what's going on, how this all works, is that Demi Moore plays this character, this 60-year-old actress who was once really big and everything, who's now kind of fading from the spotlight, and can be this much younger, beautiful, perfect version of herself once a week. It's her, it's got her mind and everything. It's literally just her switching into this other self. Again, this younger, beautiful, more perfect version and everything. And what we see is actually a big story of obsession and eventual resentment from Demi Moore's character toward her actual real self, the more that she stays in this other version. But yeah, the big thing, again, is that she can only be in this other version for so much time and only once a week. And a big thing is that whether in the moment or initially, what she chooses to accomplish while in this other body, and when time is up for her being this other person, with her fading from the spotlight in reality and aging and everything, and experiencing the things that she does while in this body, you see also a big story of neglect as well. What I will say, going back to the writing, is that it really upped itself even more when I saw the potential that the film actually had as a mystery as well. For example, when she gets really used to being this other version, what happens when, time runs out and it's time for her to switch back, and she overstays that, she abuses that? Well, there are scenes, again, because she does start to neglect her real body and real self as she becomes more comfortable with this other version of her, where she does get carried away and isn't back in time to switch, which I know that sounds confusing, but I'm not going to get into how the whole process works. Too confusing, too gross. Well, not really confusing, but too gross. But just know that when it's time to switch back to your real self, you do have to be with the body. And if you're not, well, that's just not good. Another aspect was the consequences of her abusing the time that she has in this body, where things begin happening to both her new and especially old self, that with already so much variety of the body horror that we've gotten in this movie, and always feeling impressively necessary, this was easily the best of that bunch as far as the makeup, as well as a transformation for Demi Moore, which also brought the best acting not only out of her in this movie, but maybe out of her whole career. Now, lastly, I'm just gonna say this is one of those movies where, yeah, with a 2.5-hour movie, there was definitely maybe 3, 4, 5 times where I was okay, the movie could end now. Nope. it keeps going. There was a time where even like, especially with the body horror, where I just felt like the movie just kind of stopped giving a fuck, where it just got way too carried away. It really felt like it was that thing where the movie was like, well, people wanted a 2.5 hour body horror film, let's fucking go. And me personally, with how, not tame, but like, how tasteful the body horror was done, with how tight the script was, I found it to be really disappointing. Ending aside, this is just a solid fucking movie. But if you are like one of the audience that throughout this whole runtime you are just really enjoying this movie, if you think that there's a point where you're like, okay, it should end right here, leave. I'm just gonna say it one more time. Ending aside, solid fucking movie. And overall, guys, I am gonna give Substance a positive review. Yes, guys, with all that being said, that is gonna do it for my review of The Substance. I will see you guys very soon in the next video. Have a great night, and thank you for watching.